Okay, thanks for jumping in. Let's get started. We are now on to one of the more widely used tags or elements, and this one will be called the anchor tag or hyperlink. This is denoted by using the A tag, and this is the attribute, the href. And what this is basically points to a URL. So if you're not familiar with what URLs are and URIs, be sure to check out that video on that on the channel. So you'll find a lot of use for this one, and I'll try to go through as much as I can with this tag. It lets us send visitors to other pages, obviously external and internal, but it also plays another role when it comes to organization of a website and the structure, and also SEO. So that's search engine optimization. So knowing how to use a link or a hyperlink correctly and how to optimize it and how to structure it, helping you find your page or putting it in what's called a sitemap or something like that, will help you structure and separate your page from those who don't use it correctly or accordingly. All right, so let's just do some shameless self-promotion. I'm going to link out to a URL, and the important thing within the link is the text that you place here between the A tag and the closing A tag is what the users or visitors will see. So try to give it something like a descriptive name, telling people or bots or whatever it is what the link is actually doing. So the link can be as long as you need or as short as you need. There's other ways to kind of help describe the link, which I'll get to later on in this video. But for now, let's just check this out in the browser. So here we are in the browser, and I forgot to mention, if you guys are following along, I have Tailwind running in the background. So I'm styling the browser with some Tailwind CSS. So let's just jump back to an unstyled page. So here we are in the browser, and you'll notice the thing that defines a link. You'll see that the color is usually blue or somewhere along those lines. It has an underline under the text to denote that it's a link. And when you hover over the link, you'll see that the pointer will change, and it'll let you know that you can click on this link by the icon shown here. And if you were to click on this link, it would take you to wherever you put in the href. So whatever URL you placed in the href, this is where you be led. This is where you go. You guys can check this out on your own time when you get a chance. When you go back to the actual page after you visited the link, or you went to wherever the destination was that was referenced in the href, you'll notice that the link color has changed. So it will be a darker color, blue, or like a dark, this looks like red, or a state where it's been visited. So while I'm here, I'm going to show you some attributes that will help you control how links are shown. We're going to use the attribute called target. The target attribute with the value _blank is one of the more commonly used one in HTML. So what that does is, here I am on the browser inside of the page. If I was to click this, you notice that it went red, and then you'll also notice that it opened up a new tab. And because I had _blank, it took me to a new tab with the destination that I had in the URL. Let's go back and set that to something else. There's a few other options. Let's set it to self. We will close this tab and we will click this again. And notice what it does. It opens up the URL in the current tab that we're in. So that's what self does. And usually that is the default. So we're going to take a look at top. So we're going to go _top, and then we're going to jump back out into our browser, and we're going to click on the link one more time. You really can't see the difference here, but what top does is it opens the page in the full body of the window. So this is useful for things like iframes, and when we get to that, other tags. I'll show you how this is relevant. And the last one is parent. So this is useful if the current page was opened up in a new window and you wanted to open up a subsequent link, another link inside of the original window, you would use parent. I won't do that one, but I'm sure you get the idea. So we'll get rid of this attribute for now. I will turn back on Tailwind CSS just for a moment. I want to show you the hover state. So if I added the global attribute, which would be class, and that's available to all HTML elements, and I'm going to set the text to something like Amber 600. I'm going to set the hover state. So this would be when I move my mouse over the text that I've written inside of the tag. I'm going to set this to say like Indigo 600, and then I'm going to view this in the browser. So I'm going to do a refresh. And as you can see, my tag has been styled it's been changed to what colors I denoted using Tailwind. You could do this with CSS, and there will be a section on CSS on this channel, guys, but just for following along, if you know Tailwind, this is great. If you don't worry about it. I just want to show you how they have the hover state. So if we hover over it, it changes color. If I was to click on this, it takes me to the location or the URL, but you know, there is no active state when I actually click on it. I'd have to show that or do a visited state depending on how I styled this. Now, the interesting thing about anchors is sometimes they can be styled to look like buttons, and they're actually anchor links. So there's another tag called the button tag. I'll just give you a quick styling here in Tailwind just to show you that you could change an anchor tag to look like a button. Here we are in the browser, and as you can see, the anchor tag or link now looks like a button. And we've hovered over this, and we kind of showed that there is a hover state. And when we click this, it'll take us to our destination or URL. But you can do interesting things with anchor tags, and you can make them look and feel however you want, depending on what you're trying to achieve.
What do you mean I left the video on? Oh, snap. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna get back to work, and you guys get back to the video. Okay, they're still there. All right, I'm going.
All right, we're back to where we started. I'm gonna show you guys how we can do some internal linking with anchor tags. If you checked out the previous video on lists, this will make sense. So I'm just using some Emmet here to create a list, an unordered list, and within those lists, I'm gonna have like anchor tags. So you can nest anchor tags within other elements. Within this, you'll notice that there are 100 tags that I generated with the Emmet snippet. And I'd like to do this. I would like to give the first anchor tag an ID. And in this case, this is another attribute, a global one. I'd like to call this one top. And inside of this href, I'm going to reference another ID, and the ID is going to be called bottom. The first anchor has an ID of top, and it's referencing another ID called bottom. And we're going to go create that as well. And this ID will be called bottom. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to internally link to another item within the context of this page. So here we are in the browser. If I click on item 1, you can see that it takes me down to item 100. Now you really can't see it like scrolling or doing its thing because the browser kind of just jumps to where it needs to be. Now we're going to do something here, and we're going to use a style tag, and within the style tag we're going to use some CSS. So we're going to set the HTML element, and we're going to set the scroll behavior, and we're going to set this to smooth. If you're not familiar with the syntax, that's okay. This is CSS. So if you wanted to do the same thing within Tailwind, I can show you that in a moment. So let's check this out in the browser. Let's refresh, get back to the top. If we click the first item, it kind of smooth scrolls down to the 100th item, which is around here. It's hard to see that it's not separated, but trust me, it does work. If you didn't want to throw in a style tag, which we'll introduce this a little bit later on in some other lessons, we will just go to the HTML tag inside the class here, and you would just set the scroll ability inside of Tailwind and just set that to smooth. So it's just scroll smooth. Aside from external URLs, we could also do internal or relative URLs. We could look for something within our project that is local or relative. So I'm gonna go to assets, I'm gonna go to images here, and I'm gonna look for something called this image html5.png. And I'm gonna change the text. So here we are, and we're gonna jump out, we're gonna refresh this, and we're gonna link to an HTML image. When I click this, it actually takes us to the asset images and where this file is. So what it has done is it has linked to a resource that is something other than a URL that is external, like a website, but something within our project. So when you think of absolute and relative links, think of it as this way. An absolute link, you will include the entire URL in the anchor element in the markup in the href. If you wanted to link to something specific using an absolute link, something that you knew the location of, you could say something like this. So right now I'm using the TLD that is set up for my project. So mine is html5.code. It's not secure, so I'm using this protocol and I'm linking to this item. So let's go back into our browser, refresh this, click on it. It does the same thing, and I've provided an absolute URL. So let's jump back over here. So relative URLs don't include the full path or the full structure to the item or resource. It uses the relative link, so the ./ and in this case assets, because it's based on where the file that is relative to what you're linking to is, if that makes sense. So relative links are usually used within pages on single websites whose files are shared in a common directory. So the common directory would be assets, in this case images / and then the item that I'm looking for. Be careful around that, and that does take some practice. It sounds a little confusing, but it's actually easier than what you think. To give you an idea, I'm just going to go over here to project, and as you can see right now, inside this project, this is my index. This is the file that starts my HTML. I am linking relatively to this folder asset within here, images, and within images, I am targeting the file that I'm looking for. So that is a relative path. The other one I showed you was the absolute version of that path. So just before we go any further, I just want to kind of do a quick summary. We've talked about the link markup, like how the link is set up using the anchor tag. And we've talked about the URL structure. So check out that video as well if you don't know what that is. We've done some internal linking and some external linking. So we've linked to something within our project using an absolute and a relative URL. And we've also done so using the # and an ID to link to something within the page. So as you can see, the anchor tag is very powerful and it's used quite often in many different situations and scenarios. And it's up to you to choose how you want to use that. We've actually seen some things around styling, how we can style an anchor tag to look like a button. We've talked about a couple of the states. So it has an active state, a hover state, and a state when you visit a URL or a resource. We've talked about link targets. So using the target attribute to kind of open up whatever URL or thing you're looking for in the same tab, an external tab, a parent tab, or something relating to a top tag or another element, which we'll get to, called an iframe. And that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like the video if you found this useful. Leave your comments and thoughts below. Take care, and I will see you next time.